Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for boarding today's flight on Sun Country Airlines. Please ensure that seatbelts are fastened as we take a deep dive into the company's financial performance, strategic positioning, and future flight path. We are Team 3 from the University of Minnesota Duluth. My name is Brandon.
I'm Ben.
I'm Jack. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Nico.
We are issuing a buy recommendation with a 12-month price target of $22 per share, implying 33% upside. This is driven by our three main catalysts, including Sun Country's unique and agile business model, their Amazon Air cargo partnership, and their growing and resilient margin story.
After our analysis, we have calculated a base case scenario of $22, a bear case of $18, and a bull case of $26 per share. I'll now pass it back to Brandon to discuss our business overview.
Thank you, Ben. Sun Country's passenger service is broken down into scheduled and chartered service. Sun Country's scheduled service is a core part of its operations, primarily catering to leisure, budget-friendly travelers. As an ultra-low-cost carrier based out of Minneapolis-St. Paul, Sun Country focuses on providing budget-friendly, point-to-point flights to high-demand destinations across the United States, Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. Through Sun Country's chartered segment, they serve a diverse range of customers, including colleges, travel agencies, government agencies, and corporations. Sun Country is able to customize flights and routes in order to meet the specific demands dependent on the client. This segment of business allows Sun Country to dive into seasonality demand and satisfy capacity with specialized services. Finally, cargo, an expanding contributor to Sun Country's overall revenue, with 20 planes projected by the end of 2025. Cargo includes the transportation of goods and freight using the combination of freighter flights and passenger aircraft. In 2019, Sun Country agreed to a deal with Amazon Air to operate a fleet of Boeing 737 freighters across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. I will now hand it off to Tyler to go over ESG overview.
Thank you, Brandon. For the industry that Sun Country operates in, they face many environmental challenges, leading to our total ESG score of 74 out of 100, resulting in a total ESG grade of a C. Starting with environmental, in 2023, Sun Country averaged 69% fewer departures in Spirit, Allegiant, and Frontier, as Sun Country takes advantage of the cross-utilization of aircraft, blending the company's scheduled service, charter, and cargo operations. Socially, Sun Country has an ongoing goal to give back to the communities that support its business. The company has multiple partnerships with businesses including Make-A-Wish Minnesota, Gopher Sports, and the many listed above. As for governance, both Jude Bricker and Dave Davis are largely compensated based on performance incentives, but keep in mind, a large portion is also in the form of cash. The gender diversity of Sun Country's board is split 50-50, but lacking ethnic diversity, affecting our overall ESG score. I'll now hand it over to Jack to discuss our industry overview.
Thank you, Tyler. Sun Country operates in an ultra-competitive industry segmented into three categories where they operate within the ultra-low-cost carrier market, dealing with price-sensitive leisure travelers. For an overview of the airline industry, we did a Porter's 5 Forces analysis. First, competitive rivalry is high, as all airliners compete on one thing, which is price, and this is especially prevalent for Sun Country, as their customers are budget-conscious leisure travelers looking for the lowest prices available. Next, the bargaining power of suppliers is high, as typically, airliners are heavily reliant on few suppliers. The bargaining power of buyers is also high, as buyers are price sensitive and switching costs between airlines are low. The threat of substitution is high, as flyers have many alternative travel methods at their disposal, or may choose not to travel altogether. And lastly, the threat of new entrants in the airline industry is low. Sun Country's main competitors include Allegiant Air and Frontier Airlines. In 2020, the airline industry was crushed due to COVID-19, and Sun Country was able to quickly bounce back and remain profitable as other airliners lagged behind. This is a testament to Sun Country's unique and agile business model and their strong management. I'll now hand it to Brandon to discuss our investment thesis.
Thank you, Jack. Sun Country has three main catalysts that all feed into each other. Sun Country's unique and agile business model allows them to partner with Amazon Air for their cargo segment, which then leads into their growing and resilient margin story.
To reduce seasonality, Sun Country has adopted an agile business model, utilizing flight crews across all business segments to efficiently capture peak demand. Despite greater fuel costs, Sun Country maintains a lower cost per available seat mile than low-cost carriers. This enables Sun Country's revenue per available seat mile to remain competitive with their cost per available seat mile as shown. Efficiency is the name of the game for Sun Country, as the company uses a scheduling model called Power Patterns. This has allowed Sun Country to combine both their scheduled service and charter service segments to maximize returns on flight crews and decrease operational costs as a result.
Our second catalyst is the Amazon Air Cargo Partnership. In 2019, Amazon Air and Sun Country entered into an Air Transportation Service Agreement, ATSA, that allows Sun Country to operate cargo aircraft on behalf of Amazon Air. This is an asset-light CMI service for Sun Country, as Amazon Air supplies all aircraft and covers many operating expenses, such as fuel costs. In return, Sun Country operates these aircraft under their Air Carrier Certificate. As of June 2024, an amended and restated ATSA was signed to implement 8 additional aircraft on top of the 12 existing aircraft by the end of Q3 2025. This extends the deal until 2030. We project that this deal will greatly boost revenue diversification and risk mitigation, as we project the cargo segment will have a sales CAGR of 23.8% through 2028.
Our third and final catalyst is Sun Country's growing and resilient margin story. Sun Country has built a resilient margin profile through strong risk mitigation strategies and operational efficiencies, allowing it to grow and expand its margins even in tough economic environments. We believe the industry has yet to fully recognize Sun Country's resiliency and the value of its strategic investments. During and after COVID, Sun Country was the most resilient of its competitors and shows the highest gross, operating, and net margins in 2021 and beyond. I'll now hand it off to Tyler to discuss our financial analysis.
Thank you, Ben. Sun Country has performed at a sales CAGR of 7.4% over the past 6 years. With an addition to the Amazon Air partnership, we expect revenues to become less volatile and less dependent on passenger travel. Although we see Sun Country's sales CAGR falling to 4.7%, we see the risks of passenger revenue falling with it.
Looking at margins, we have seen a volatile period mainly due to COVID and inflation in 2021 that has caused a higher interest rate environment, lowering margins over the last 3 years. With an expectation of lower rates into the future, we expect margins to increase over the next 5 years, along with higher margin revenue from the Amazon Air deal.
Looking at the passenger side of the business, we've seen a recovery in available seat miles now exceeding pre-pandemic levels. Looking at 2024 and into 2025, we have seen a slowdown in the much improved air passenger travel with an oversupply seen in the market and a slight decrease in the load factor from 86 to 84%. This can also be seen through a drop in average airfare prices in travel over the last 2 years. With this, we expect the slowdown to be short-term and expect improvements into the second half of 2025. I'll now hand it over to Ben for our valuation.
Thanks, Tyler. Looking at valuation, we chose to value Sun Country based on an EV to EBITDAR and a discounted cash flow. For EV to EBITDAR, we use a 23.7% margin and a 5 times multiple. Our price range of $18 to $23 per share represents a 4.5% change in EBITDAR margins. For our discounted cash flow statement, we use a discount rate of 8% and a terminal growth rate of 2.5%. For our free cash flow growth, we use a 7% growth rate for the first 5 years, and for the longer term, we use a 3.75% growth rate. This is due to our expectation of increased capital expenditures into the long term.
Thank you, Ben. Sun Country faces industry-wide risks, but differentiates itself by proactively addressing them. Despite our strong conviction, we have highlighted 3 risks that affect our overall thesis. Labor unions accounted for 60% of Sun Country's workforce, and labor accounted for 34% of total operating expenses in fiscal year 2024. Sun Country most recently signed a collective bargaining agreement with flight attendants. Sun Country mitigated this risk by maintaining active communication with labor unions and getting deals done early to avoid work stoppages. Fuel costs remain highly volatile for Sun Country, as they accounted for 24% of total operating expenses in fiscal year 2024. Sun Country mitigates fuel risk utilizing pass-through fuel contracts, adjusting ticket prices based on fuel costs, and only flying in peak times. Finally, Sun Country is highly dependent on VFR travel. An economic slowdown would amplify an already price-sensitive industry, as switching costs are low. Sun Country mitigates this through their cargo and charter operations. To reiterate, we are issuing a buy recommendation of $22 per share, driven by Sun Country's agile business model, Amazon Air Cargo partnership, and growing and resilient market story. We would like to thank the judges, the CFA Society, and everyone else in attendance. We will now open up for questions.
Thanks, guys. I guess it surprised me that one of the risks for Sun Country wasn't competition. And so I'm just curious, is that because more of the business model is moving towards charter or cargo? Is it because of their positioning in MSP? Or is it just, it would have been bullet point 4 if we had room for 4 bullet points?
Yeah, so management emphasizes that they are not trying to compete against these larger airlines such as Delta. And this is because they've got such a small fleet. Their business model is to be extremely flexible for smaller customers. Therefore, they're not going to try to fly every day to compete with these other airlines that have larger fleets and utilize much newer planes.
What do you think of their capital structure?
We think it's very average for the industry right now. It is a little high on the debt side. That's mainly due to their overbuying in planes in the recent years. We think that'll decrease, so it'll be an overall better capital structure in the next few years with debt reduction and lower spend on new aircraft or maintenance and stuff.
Oh, what is the bear case for the people who are short sellers thinking?
Yeah, we think our bear case right now is more of a lower growth on the passenger side. Right now we're looking at roughly flat growth for now on the passenger side. And for the bear case, we would expect a couple percent decrease in revenues from the passenger side.
Your aggregate model that you showed has got a pretty steep trajectory on margins, gross operating. If you disaggregate that between the cargo and non-cargo, what do those margins look like? And how do you make assumptions on the Amazon margins?
Yeah, I would say that the passenger margins and the cargo margins right now are roughly the same, and they have stated that as well. We expect to overtake the passenger revenue margin. That is personal to us. We believe it very strongly, simply due to overall cost in the cargo. It's very low for them, and it's just very profitable business for them. And I think expanding into the cargo is very good for the business because it diversifies the revenue and makes it so that seasonal demand is not affecting their revenue.
So if I look at your model though, 25 to 29, just cupping ratios, cargo revenue doesn't really grow that much in terms of share of total revenue. And you're saying that so if that's a huge margin driver and passenger is not, that doesn't square. How are you making these assumptions? Are you making assumptions that passenger margins are going to grow equally fast as Amazon?
Yeah,
which is going to be higher in 29?
Yeah, right now we see somewhat of a slowdown and a pause in the passenger side, allowing that cargo revenue to kind of build in and support the margins in the business, overall revenues. And then in 26, we expect passenger revenue to increase again and start increasing those margins once again.
I like your quarter factor analysis, but just going back, I'm curious, based on all the 5 scores, how comfortable are you in terms of all your assumptions for the growth in the next few years? Is it simply because of Amazon? Because if I look at all the scores, I feel like I will question my assumptions for a lot of the growth numbers, right? Other than the threat of your entry.
So are you saying like the high
Because on your DCF analysis, all the assumptions, you have all the growth rates there. I'm just trying to tie your assessment here versus your growth expectations. How confident are you with whether that's the management guidance or your own analysis?
We're confident within Sun Country's management to continue to do what they've been doing with their efficient business model. As for force by forces analysis, this is like a broad overview of the airline industry, so all competitors, all Sun Country's competitors are facing the same. As for the assumptions, I'm not entirely sure how to tie that back into the force by forces analysis.
Thanks.
Kind of going back to, a big part of your investment thesis is the growth of the Amazon cargo is kind of part of that. How sticky is that Amazon cargo relationship? And if that relationship were to, let's say Amazon takes that business elsewhere, would that alter your recommendation?
Yeah, I can take that. So in terms of sort of asking with like how sticky it is, so with this deal, there is a 2-year wind down period if the deal is not extended, or if either party decides to terminate the deal midway through to the maturity. And to the second part of your question, it would affect our overall growth thesis heading through this year. But going forward, management has expressed they are looking to implement these plans they have out on these 737-900 ERs back into service to grow their passengers segments through 28. So looking ahead, we are definitely, hinging our growth this year on cargo, and forward, we would definitely see their passenger growth.
Yeah, I would just like to quickly add on to that for the cargo. Sun Country is the only 737 aircraft that Amazon operates, so we believe that's very sticky towards Amazon and the Sun Country as well.
I'll fire one more at you then. If you were able to get a meeting with management, if you could provide them one piece of advice, what would you say?
With the hiring of pilots, and at Analyst Day, they said their passenger slowdown was attributable to their focus on increasing their cargo segment with Amazon. Yes, there is a shortage of pilots in the industry. Whatever they would have to do, maybe increase salaries for pilots, but if they were able to mitigate a slowdown within the passenger segment this year, maybe into 2025, that would be great for Sun Country, as they're growing both segments at the same time.
Then I would just say, implementing a full ESG report that they don't currently do that many other competitors do right now.
If I'm a competitor of Sun Country and I want to do some damage, what do I do?
I can take that one. I would say come into the MSP hubs and offer lower rates than them. It's simply just that. That's what they're competing on. They want to be the lowest rate on where they are going, and that is their simple business model. The other thing I would say is huge part is Delta. I know Sun Country has stated that they don't want to mess with Delta, but if they accidentally do, that could be a huge part that would affect their business.
So maybe just finish that thought. That doesn't sound like something that has much of a barrier to it.
Yeah, I think with that, I see Allegiant and Frontier being their main competitor right now, and with that, they're offering the same low services. It may not be from Minneapolis to say Orlando, but it may be a different place to Orlando, and they may put connections through if it is cheaper for them. And I think it's very possible for that to happen.
What do you think?